r/Askreddit. Doctors of Reddit, what are the dead giveaway signs that someone is faking? Obligatory not a doctor, but I got a call from my son's school nurse when he was in 2nd grade, and the conversation went like this. Nurse sounding upbeat and cheerful says, "Your son wants to tell you his terrible news." Son gets on the phone, says, "Hi mom, I cut my finger off." I ask him, "Where is your finger now?" "Son, I put it back on." I said, "Can I talk to the nurse?" Nurse gets on the phone again, says, "Sounds serious, right?" I asked, "Does he have a substitute teacher today?" Yes. I told the nurse to let him know I will take him to the hospital for a shot for his finger, to which he says, "I think it's okay." I glued it on really good. Nurse kept him in the office for a bit to talk about scary changes in the classroom. My sister is a pediatric audiologist, and this is my favorite story of hers. Apparently, sometime in elementary school, usually the early grades, a ton of kids like to fake hearing loss. Like not just "Oh, I can't hear the teacher." Full on, want to get hearing aids, etc. Anyway, she explained to me that, based on the way she plays the tones, you can usually tell if someone is faking, especially when they just pretend they can't hear anything. But it's not 100%, obviously, because hearing loss patterns can be really weird. However, she's caught a number of kids simply by saying, "Okay, so I'm going to play a random number of tones and they'll go in both ears. I want you to say yes if you hear it and no if you don't." I don't know why anyone would want to fake anything medical, unconsciousness in particular. I got a compound fracture recently and called 911 on myself and was put on hold. Fun stuff. But got through and asked them to send help. Operator was a badass and kept asking me questions to keep me conscious. The ambulance folks arrive, casually got out of the ambulance, walk up to me, and then saw the bone sticking out of my body and said, quote, "Oh, you're actually hurt." Yes. Did you think I called 911 because I spilled some lemonade? Then it occurred to me that most of their calls must be horseshit. But to cause me even more confusion, I received close to a $2,000 bill for the privilege of actual help and the ride to the hospital. That ludicrous bill is no fault of the EMS. I'm very much appreciative of their existence and they don't get nearly enough credit. But the best part of receiving that bill, the ambulance ride, was roughly $1,850. The fentanyl they gave me was $2.15. I'm in the middle of being treated like I'm faking, and it's really frustrating. I had a tool slip at work and hit me in the eye and forehead. Knocked me out for a second, and I lost sight in my eye. An hour later I started getting my sight back, but it hasn't fully come back. It's been months now. Two things I got diagnosed with were ocular migraines and vitreous detachment and a concussion. But none of those things explain why my vision is still blurry in my right eye. Except the VD, which causes floaters, but my issue is blurry vision, like I have Vaseline in my eye. But doctors keep telling me I'm fine, that I need to go back to work. One doctor told me to think about the economy and that I was lucky to have a job right now, so I quit my job. I still want to see out of my right eye, but none of the doctors are taking me seriously. I have the reverse. My back went out, extreme sciatica pain, like being struck by lightning constantly. Couldn't move for days. When someone found me 3 days later they called 911. Just for the doctor to tell me I was faking it for pain meds. While I was crying in pain I asked him why I'd lay in a pile of my own piss and shit for 3 days for some Vicodin when I literally own a bar. Ducking insane. Edit. Thank each and every one of you for sharing your stories. As much as I hate hearing them, at least we aren't alone, and we know what each other are going through at some level. Actually, I feel much less alone in the world right now, because I've never met someone in my situation before. But they are obviously out there. My wife is a doctor, and she had dealt with people faking things like one of their legs simply not working. The trick is to tell them to do some other thing with a positive phrasing, making it seem like doing so will prove the patient's story is true, while it proves the opposite. This works for both people who are actively faking it and people who have subconsciously convinced themselves the problem is real. For example, if they say their right leg can't move, you first ask them to try lifting it, which they try and obviously fail to move or flex any muscles in it. Then you act intrigued and say something like, now your left leg is the one that works fine, right? Go ahead and lift it up for me for comparison. While they are doing this, you still casually have your hand on their right leg, which you had placed there when you were feeling for any activity when they tried to lift it. Now when the person is laying there and lifts their left leg to prove their right one doesn't work, they will naturally flex their right leg to provide balance with their left leg in the air. If they are able to flex their right leg then, but won't even flex it when they claim to be trying to move it, then you know their leg still works. You just have to narrow down if they realize are faking it intentionally. Not a doctor, but doctors often think my family is faking for an unknown reason. When there's something wrong with our organs, our white blood cell count doesn't go up. My younger sister got appendicitis when she was in her early teens, crying from the pain, but blood work showed nothing was amiss. If it hadn't been for other tests and my dad's insistence on them, she might not have been treated in time. So they open her up and surprise, a gross appendix that was close to bursting. My dad insisted, because of an operation he had just had to remove his gallbladder. He was in so much pain that he was vomiting, could hardly walk. It had been building up for a while, and he was pretty sure what it was. He went to the doctor, but blood work showed his white count was normal. My dad had to scream in agony on their table for ages before they finally gave in and took him to surgery. They go in, see a perfectly healthy looking gallbladder. They pull it out, cut it open, and sand spills out. Dry sand. We learned later that it had completely stopped working and totally filled with protein chains. It was removed before it started killing my dad in earnest. So yes, people fake it, people lie, but do double check just in case. I'm not a physician but a paramedic. Honestly, I don't really care if you're faking, as long as it's halfway believable. I'm still going to treat it as the worst case scenario. Faking a seizure? You'll get a full set of vitals, a blood sugar and a shot of Benzos. There's lots of different types of seizures. If you call 911 because you're in extreme pain and want an ambulance ride, I'll put the good drugs in your vein hole. I'd rather give 100 drug seekers a 100 mcg of fentanyl than withhold it for the one person that really needs it. Can I tell if someone is faking? Yeah, most times, but it goes both ways. If you go too hard, I might assume you have a legit life-threatening injury and sedate, paralyze and intubate you, or start fourths in your jugular or shin bone. Fake it if you want, but traction may vary. Honestly, my wife just needs to show up at emergency, and for some reason they always assume she is faking. A nurse tried to discharge her when she had an ectopic pregnancy, saying it was the stomach flu. 4 hours later she was in emergency surgery. She has hypothyroidism, but nearly all male doctors don't believe it's a real condition, so keep trying to take her off her meds or reducing them. Apparently this is somewhat of a common issue. She recently fell in the stairs and ducked her leg up. It took 4 R&D visits before they raised her leg despite the swelling and bruising. She was sent home from hospital when we first got together and had blood poisoning, collapsed on the tube on the way home, and straight in an ambulance for another 3-day stay in hospital. It's a nightmare to watch, as it's almost guaranteed at this point they will not take her seriously. Not a doctor or nurse, but as a patient it's really messed up when they think you are faking. I had an extremely bad year last year and was almost daily losing consciousness. Couldn't keep food or some days water down. I collapsed one day after having horrible stomach pains. The ER doctor, doing his job, very quickly assessed me and had them give me Dilaudid, thinking I was probably going to be rushed into surgery for gallbladder removal. At the time this was understandable. However, this particular medicine made me become completely unconscious. They were then not able to do my intake or ask me additional questions. The next doctor assumed that I was on drugs because I shouldn't have had that reaction. He ran all sorts of drug panels on me, and they of course all came back negative. They then had to give me Narcan twice to bring me back, as I was out for much longer than I should have been. I'm much better now, but that was an absolute horrible experience. I don't remember all of it, but I do remember my sister, who was there with me, was in tears from how I was treated. She is a medical professional herself and could not believe what was happening in her own hospital. The doctor who thought I was on drugs no longer works there.